Hey, hello everyone. Welcome. Today we have Dr. Charlie Moreno-Romero. He's originally from Colombia, but is currently based in Estonia. He is deeply engaged in innovative educational practices that actively empower young people in their learning. He has a diverse academic background in philosophy, anthropology, and education, but his focus is on democratic education, social justice, and inclusion. From 2019 and 2024, he served as the General Coordinator of a democratic school within a public school in Estonia, and he is currently a council member of the European Democratic Education Community, or EUDEC, and a founding member of the Rights-Centric Education Network. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Baran. It's a pleasure to be here. I have had the honor to be a guest to Iranian colleagues already. This is the second time, so I'm very happy to be here, and I hope that we can have a conversation. It's a bit theoretical, but it will become a bit more practical later on. So, are you seeing my screen? Nope. Perfection. So I need to somehow. It's here. 1 second, please. Now you can see it.
Yes, now we can see it.
So, as Baran was mentioning, I was born in Colombia um, many years ago, and I moved to around 20 years ago to Estonia, where I have been living. I have also studied in Spain. Um, After coming back from Spain, I co-founded a democratic school inside of a public school. Now, retrospectively, I feel that one positive situation that happened at that time was COVID, because suddenly, after 3 months, we have got three inspection visits, and then COVID came, and suddenly we stopped being an issue within the local educational context. And this is a school that, as the name says, is based on democratic principles: one voice, one vote, restorative justice over punitive justice, the idea that learners have um, the right to participate actively in how learning happens, deciding together on timetable or the curriculum or how to learn better. Of course, as a public school, it needs to get to certain um, compromises. And yeah, well, we are not going to speak a bit much about Suvemäe, but I would like to invite you. There is such an event happening in mid-January called the Learning Planet Festival. And from the 16th to the 30th of January, there will be people from all around the world facilitating workshops on different topics. One of those, co-organized with EUDEC, the European Democratic Education Community, and the Rights-Centric Education Network, we will be talking about Suvemäe and even watch the short documentary that is out there. It is actually that one that you see on your screens here in the lower part. I have shared already with Baran this presentation, so she will share it with you, and you can click on it and then go to watch the mini documentary, so we could have some material for thought. Currently, I work as an independent consultant, focusing on participatory governance, self-directed learning, and circle practice. And I volunteer for both the European Democratic Education Community and the Rights-Centric Education. This is more or less what the plan for today will be. I will share with you several views, several perspectives. I hope they are coherent and it's not too much information. But I would like to think with you as to how to implement a decolonial pedagogy, heutagogy, in different sorts. I will speak a little bit about modernity and the relationship with schooling, what decolonization means and what decoloniality means. Work based on the global south. And then an analysis, some reflections on how this could be a practical approach to how we accompany young people in their learning. So usually now we jump into the topic. Usually when we talk about modernity, how modern things are, we are associating this concept to other concepts like freedom, like moral law. We hear a lot about the French Revolution, democracy, la République, autonomous citizenry, fraternity, equality, those words, representative democracy. When we talk about democracy, most of the times we are thinking of electing somebody. Social progress and also rational governance, people deciding on how their nations and their lives are guided based on a process of reasoning. However, modernity is also connected to these other concepts. Eurocentric domination, one way how we see the world, values, imperialism, the destruction of local traditions in favor of globalization, technocracy, specifically the economic goals guiding both cultural and political actions, the exploitation of non-European culture that continues happening. At the moment, there's a lot of struggle in regards to mining, extractivism, and the forced implementation of that concept of civilization at the expense of local knowledges and practices. There are these three main concepts that are closely associated to modernity: the faith in the individual, believe in science that will explain everything, and also that the economy is self-regulating, which we know it is not. Still, we have these beliefs around the word modernity, and we cannot speak about modernity without considering the nation state and schooling. I really like that picture. Jana Clemens is a colleague from South Africa, and she has been writing a lot about decolonization. What she says, well, her reflections are related to how we are speaking about decolonizing a curriculum, but we are not actually getting into a wider lens of what needs to be decolonized. We are speaking about age segregation, for instance. We are speaking about schools as islands away from communities. We speak about how play is considered a waste of time. How the main values of schooling, and I'm going back to this point very soon, are related to silence, to obedience, to submission. Competition over collaboration, even though we are speaking about projects, and in the end, we keep grades, we keep people considering that everything is a struggle and the world is a hard one and we need to compete with each other. Therefore, we have very little practice on how to collaborate with each other. And then there is this feeling of lack of sense of autonomy and empowerment. Some people might say that it has influenced the political sphere or scene in the United States at the moment. When people see that things are chaotic, they would appeal for a strong authoritarian figure that would put everything in order. And so this is embedded in the nature and origins of our schooling. The idea of everybody needs to learn at the same time, the authority of the adult, what science tells us that is knowledge. Interestingly enough, there is not a single research or scientific evidence that says that the way how we organize schools is the best for learning. Still, it is a fetish there, and I will share with you some insights I got to know when I was studying my PhD in Spain, and these have to do with the origins of schooling. We also have the hidden curriculum, how minds, bodies need to be controlled in order to achieve that submission. The blind belief in authority as the source of knowledge. And this is affecting us in different spheres. Yesterday, I was having a conversation with a mother who shared with me how her child was being bullied at school, and how the classmates would not get involved because they're afraid of getting the consequences by bullies. This speaks of individualism. This speaks of if it doesn't touch you, don't do anything. Don't say anything. Don't protest. Be quiet. And I think that there are niches and spaces all around the world that are emerging as response, as protest, exactly for this normalized injustice that we see around. Um, the cartoon is just self-explaining, self-explanatory. I expect you all to be independent, innovative, and critical thinkers who will do exactly as I say. It's similar to my science teacher who spoke once about today we are going to speak about democracy, and somebody raised a hand and asked why, and the reply was because I say so. Shut up. So there is a lot of incoherence in our narratives in regards to development, in regards to democracy, in regards to citizenry, and what actually happens within our learning environment. So it is not only about the content that we need to be talking about when we speak about decoloniality or decolonial curriculum. It's also about the processes and practices. Um, we need to use different sorts of systems. We need to play as well. But understanding at the basis, we are speaking about relationships. We are speaking about people. And this concept of consent is tremendously important. Consent is based on a right-centric learning approach that involves recognizing the dignity of the other person, an adult or a young person, to participate in decisions that affect them. So, but decoloniality is something that comes from the global south. You will have access to all this, also to a list of resources. And it's a critical view of what we call modernity, what we have normalized, naturalized, and proposes different sorts of practices, different sorts of ways of integrating, reconciling the individual with the actual learning process. When we speak about decoloniality from this perspective of the global south, we are speaking about three different kinds of decoloniality. One of them has to do with power, knowledge, and being. And this is another one that I like, another picture, which means let's talk about these big elephants in the room. So when we talk about the decoloniality of power, basically it's a narrative, it's a mindset, it's a perspective that power needs to be centralized, that decisions are better made from top down. We will go again in a moment to the origins of schooling. We hear that the origins of schooling are to be found in the Industrial Revolution, but that is not true. It was actually a bit before that. It was very useful during the Industrial Revolution because you needed a top-down approach. You needed somebody with perhaps higher education, different sorts of skills, guide the work of other people. You didn't need a factory worker to start innovating with how to collate two structures to build something, right? So in that sense, the centralized power was at the center of this approach, is at the center. There is the idea of control over everything that goes around, labor, nature, the resources, sex and reproduction, and also subjectivity. Who am I? How do I identify myself? What are my thoughts? Are they divergent, the same as others, or they are differentiated? Capital, economic power. If we ask our young people, what do you want to be, to become, to study, or to do in your life, many people would say rich, as the most important value that a person can attain is not wisdom, is not mercy, is not care for others, is money. And we have got this idea in our minds that money will make you happy. And it's also a system of cultural domination. So we speak about what different genders should be, or different age groups should do, what the role of of children, of women, is in society. Excuse me 1 second. The second one has to do with knowledge. And this has to do with accepted knowledge within the establishment. It's as simple and as perhaps minimal as to say that some European person discovered a continent. It was one mistake, though, but didn't discover, stumbled upon. It has to do with how we believe that success needs to be built. For instance, one of the things that I have noticed recently is that when we speak about entrepreneurship, we are inevitably focusing on individual actors developing certain processes. Rarely we speak about the commons, for instance. We speak about community-based development. We rarely speak about degrowth, which is a perspective which is being developed worldwide and should be taken into account. We are speaking about silence knowledges, perhaps dealing with plants and how to treat illness, perhaps dealing with different ways of educating or accompanying young people in learning, and also the hidden, the invisible, and the null curriculum, the bits that are reinforced but not explicitly mentioned, the things that are ignored totally within our schools and our curriculum. This makes part of this. Finally, we're speaking about decoloniality of being. And this has to do with the subjectivities that we create around age, race, gender, background, position, ethnicity of different sorts. What are those expectations? What are those patterns that are expected to be reproduced in terms of the differences that we have? This perhaps is one that we see quite often. It is also developed through banal nationalism, right? We are this, the others are not. It's not only what we are, but also what we are not, right? So there is this constant comparison with others. I am amazed, for instance, when we watch the news, that it is not news if somebody develops some important solution, unless this person is from our country. Then it gets into the news, right? We tend to separate people very clearly, not really thinking, considering us as a species, but rather as scattered individuals grouped into different nations. So who are we talking about when we need to decolonize whatever? So it has to do with the local realities. It has to do with changing patterns and learning, disempowerment, with breaking with all those habits that we are having internalized. It's very challenging because it represents socially a moment of vulnerability. Starting to question who can do what and how, and what kind of knowledge is acceptable, or started to consider that the local community can take responsibility over community development, not the state itself. So it brings up lots of possible tensions. Now, this brings me this whole analysis of the decolonial mindset, narratives, structures, brought me to schooling. My research had dealt with democratic education and education for social justice and inclusion. The third angle was decoloniality. I couldn't develop it further, but it's something that I try to implement in my practice with young people. So I found this book and found it provoking. So I went through it. What I found was reference to this fella, August Herman Franca, who was a military bishop. So he was in the army and he was a priest, who gets the task by Frederick I and Frederick William I, both Prussian Kaisers, to develop a system to guarantee submission obedience of citizens and soldiers. What this person came up with, I will show you in the next slide. That system, exactly as it was copied by a third guy who was Horace Mann, the first Secretary of Education of the state of Massachusetts. This happened around early 19th century in the US, when the United States is expanding itself towards the West. This is the system that Mr. Franke developed. Separating kids by age and gender. In the beginning, girls were not, or women were not allowed to attend any kind of schooling or instruction. Organizing the days in chunks of disciplines, guided by a unified curriculum under the authority of an adult, a teacher. It could be a positive figure in your life. It could be somebody who would use rewards and punishments as a way to get what they wanted. Basically, in schools, what we have is a situation in which adults have become responsible for young people's learning. The director gets a mandate by the Minister Secretary of Education that the kids in that school learn A, B, C, and D. The director, in turn, gives the task to the teacher and gets a group of 20 to 30 to 40 young people. And this teacher needs to make sure that all those students learn A, B, C, or D. In reality, there is always a perspective of inferiority, that one that is held by young people. In the end, the main goal is to promote obedience, silence, follow authority, don't question much. Children in conventional schools are in a specific situation that has to do with this coloniality of being, has to do with an inferior status, not only in terms of being in the process of becoming adults, but also because they haven't lived as long, so they are thought of as incompetent and lacking knowledge. They are also considered of as being too emotional, not having enough rational thinking. And the end product of that system that I showed you is to create a homogeneous society, one that is based on standards, that competes, and that is useful to the market, labor market, and the economic market as well. So the tensions in schools are multiple, and we can see this with, there was this professor in England, she was speaking about the 4 different kinds of learners. So she spoke about the bored ones, the ones who do the minimum, who are not motivated, but they comply, the compliant ones, I think, as she calls them. She talked about the rebels, the ones who are resisting authority, who are actively sending messages, this is not fitting to my interests, I find this stupid, I feel that I don't have rights, and they are resisting, protesting. Then they have the high achievers, which are those who want to get always 5s or A's, who give up also part of their interests in order to participate in that roulette of getting a better future than the others. And then we have the explorers. And I do believe that our practice is aimed at supporting also the development of every kid as an explorer. The explorers are asking questions by themselves. The explorers engage actively in what happens in schools, in every sense. Now, there are different difficulties, there are challenges, right? Because most of us work in public schools, perhaps. And we have this separation by age, we have the organization of the days, the adults are expected to implement certain activities. So it sounds like an interesting idea, but how can we get there? The big question is this: how can the school contribute to the development and consolidation of democracy and equity if it is based on a practice that is meant to promote submission since the very beginning? So some years ago, we got iPads and people were talking about how iPads would change schools. They don't, or they didn't. Then there were smart screens. Oh, great, awesome. But the practices were not changing. Then we started talking about project-based learning. But the lack of motivation, the disempowerment by young people, the burnout by adults is still there. Now we are talking about AI. My experience while talking with people who are developing these kind of strategies, they are still perpetuating, not questioning the structures of our conventional schooling. The division by age, which is something that has absolutely no scientific background. I mean, the scaffolding spoken by Piaget exists. Children learn better when they are mixed in groups. The micro school movement is opposing these mammoth schools, huge schools with 1,000 students, because they understand that for learning to happen, you need a community, a real learning community that is supportive, that knows and embraces each other. But it's important to have this intimacy, that we know each other's first name, that we can approach each other within this different practice of learning from an active perspective. And then we continue to ask ourselves why our democracies are not working. My perspective, my opinion is that we are not actually educating for democracy or in democracy. We are educating to perpetuate something that came from the global north, came from that colonial mindset of modernity. What I name as an heutagogy, but it's not me who came up with this term. It's very close to andragogy, adult education. And this has to do with a truly self-directed approach. Self-directed learning, from my perspective, and this is me, Charlie, speaking, in my opinion, it's a bubble concept. It doesn't, everybody speaks about it, but we don't really see how it works. We don't really understand that oftentimes the goal is to have learners, young people, be able to learn the state curriculum by themselves. But this is not what self-directed learning means. It is about learner-initiated learning. It has to do, from my perspective, with three different angles. One has to do with self-determination theory. The need to have, on the one hand, connection among the members of a community. That you do through participatory governance, for instance. You need to have autonomy by allowing people to make their own decisions, by engaging in experimentations of different sorts, by becoming agent of their own learning. And then we can speak about what kind of competences we are developing. That's on the one hand. Then we have learn-to-learn approaches, and it's very similar, but the difference is oracy. Oracy meaning I can speak about the things that I can explain myself, basically, in different ways, public speaking, but also speaking about the learnings, using your skills to convey different collaboration possibilities. And then we're speaking about executive functions. This has to do with working memory, has to do with inhibitory skills, and has to do with cognitive flexibility. Those three things, in my opinion, make up for self-directed learning. So this is an approach that intends to support spaces where we are actively breaking with practices that come from modern schools, conventional schools, and intended to equip young people with the tools to participate in actual democracies. On the one hand, we are speaking about power. So since the coloniality of power within the modern school, the conventional school, is based on centralized authority, we're speaking here about distributed leadership. We're speaking about participatory governance. We are speaking about For instance, the Student Voice Framework by Laura Landi, a professor from Ireland, is very useful, and you can find lots of information online on this. How to bring the conditions so that young people start taking more responsibility. Freedom without responsibility is totally pointless. It can be toxic, right? And we see people who have never or rarely been exist within functional boundaries, mistreat others, for instance, with no consequences, or have been mistreated. So in this situation, the goal is to involve the whole school community in different ways, through different practices, into making decisions together. It could start with, how do we want to celebrate Halloween? It could continue with, we have an exhibition day. What do we want to exhibit about? Who takes what responsibilities? Children are craving for responsibility. As facilitators, I believe that we need to create those possibilities for them to take on those responsibilities. The negotiated curriculum approach means there is a bit within the curriculum. There are certain important concepts, skills, competences, but how can we help young people to develop their potential, their interests in connection with that curriculum? It's not done from a centralized perspective. It's done together, dialogically. It means we sit together, guys, we have these topics in the curriculum. How can we learn about this? How can we frame this learning? How can we show that we have learned this or that, right? It means, from our perspective as adults, releasing power, allowing young people to start taking that power and use it together. Our role as facilitators is to ask critical questions, but not to ask their questions. Usually, in conventional schools, what happens is that we have a project, this is the question, develop the project, right? My experience as an educator for 22 years, it's tremendously enriching and heartwarming to accompany young people in asking their own questions. So if, let's say, we cannot negotiate on this. The topic is the period in between 497 and 1492, which is very Eurocentric approach called the Middle Ages. What exactly do we want to learn from that? How do we want to learn it? How do we want to assess it? How do we want to present it to the rest of the community? Do we want to choose a topic, make a theater play, but it's not the centralized power in the adult, but it's the community learning how to make decisions together. Remember that bit when I was talking about oracy, speaking in public? When we are talking about school meetings or sociocracy, we're speaking about providing the grounds for young people to practice those skills. Participating in thinking together. How do we want to see this? This is much more empowering than teaching anything or lecturing on any topic, because they're engaging really as agents of their own learning. They are starting to amaze that power. I can learn anything. I don't know if it is the case in Iran, but I oftentimes find people around here who say, oh, I cannot do that. Oh, I wish I could, but no, I can't. And they're kind of stuck already. They have this fixed mindset that their capabilities are so limited that learning a new language or engaging in different sets of practices, even taking care about your own health, becomes overwhelming, and they cannot engage in that. I believe that our role as adults within learning environments is to provide the possibilities for young people to feel, I can learn anything I want. And if I don't know how to, I can ask how. And please correct me if I'm mistaken, but in my experience, there are many kids who are very afraid of making mistakes or asking for help. They should be actually ready to make mistakes and ask for help, because that's how we are learning. That's how we learn from each other, evolutionarily. So this is one perspective, how to break to that with that centralized power. The other one has to do with knowledge. What exactly are we talking about when we speak about knowledge? So this is bringing different ways of learning, different ways of understanding. I remember a project I did with a fifth graders. That would be like 11-year-olds. And we were talking about, it was a language lesson. It was English. And we were supposed to be talking about time. So I proposed that we explore calendars, different calendars. Are they different calendars or not? So we engaged together in making some questions that we all had and explore what is the moon calendar, what is the Mayan calendar, what kind of calendar, how did the Egyptians, for instance, understood that the Nile was going to be flooded, how our calendar, and all this in English. So the practice was there. How was the learning of different cultures, history, embedded into language learning, especially how were they guiding that learning? That was the important bit of it. It was about bringing hidden history, highlighting also. I am volunteering at the school with history lessons, and I was speaking with a boy who wanted to do a research. Well, his presentation, his research was about great people in history. And he had chosen 6 or 7 characters. All of them were male. All of them were European. Um, so I asked, whether it was he had thought about it or he had noticed this. For him, it was like, yeah, but then who am I going to speak about? And I said, well, maybe we need to check who are the other people in history, right? Who have done what? So he engaged into this process of finding out who was this, who was that, but not only in Europe, but around the world. So he found very inspiring characters, not all European, not all male, that had done important things for their communities. So by asking questions without guiding directly, he was able to start asking his own questions. The learning initiated bit of this is very important. We are talking about lack of motivation in young people. Some of them are doing it just for the grade. Some of them don't have any hope, become cynical. They see that the world is not what what it was supposed to be. In many countries, the narrative of finish high school, go to college, get a job, get a wife or a husband, get a house, car, a mortgage, and travel once a year abroad is not anymore on the table. And some young people are feeling bitter about it. So I feel that it's very important for them also to start exploring what are the strong points how is it that they want to contribute to their own lives or to their own communities, and for this having them ask their own questions and relate them with the curriculum could be a great way. Now we are living in a media mediated time, so it's important also to bring spaces where we can speak about propaganda, misinformation, disinformation, the effects of blue light on the screen, self-care. I checked something very interesting the other day. Self-care is not about putting cucumbers on your eyes, or having a mask over the weekend. Self-care means eat well, go to sleep 8 hours at least, do some sport, visit your friends, be outdoors. Speaking about this is important with young people. Perhaps they don't have many possibilities to speak about this. So I do believe that we have their role. And then finally, it has to do with being the subjectivities, the subjectification process. Who am I and what kind of power I use, specifically for us adults. But it deals with critical discourse analysis, how certain words, certain concepts, certain jokes can reproduce inequalities, how we need to reframe the way how we speak. Oftentimes we are very bad at it, adults. If there is a conflict with a colleague, oh, but you do this, right? We rarely speak about needs, and this is what needs to be in there. What do I need? And I had to do that also with my students. At some point when things were not working, I had to explain how I felt and what I needed to experience for my own motivation to go back into this is, it's like tango. You need two for tango, and you need two for learning. And grades and passing tests is not learning. That is something else. We need to have an active analysis of historiography. How do we build identities? How do we build identitary categories? Include different ways of learning. And very importantly, when I talk about when it's written there, you see distributed leadership. We are speaking about treating people with respect, dignity, and the right to participate. I feel that many times we adults fail in this. So we speak to other adults in a certain tone with certain words, but we speak with young people in different ways. So the distributed leadership, the making decisions together as related to power, that is tremendously important. It means us going down a bit to their height and start building with them together, abandoning authoritarian attitudes and practices. This is perfect example of a modern view of children, right? The Lord of the Flies. If you let them, they will be wild. They will burn each other. They will kill each other. And this is the social construction of school of the child. Peter Gray rescue an actual event that happened near New Zealand, where a group of young people got stranded in the sea, and they landed in a deserted island. They survived there something like for 3 months. One of them fell from a cliff and broke the leg, and the others took so well care of this child, and we're speaking about 12, 14-year-olds, that the fracture, the broken bone was totally healed. Excuse me, my child is leaving. Ciao. See you. Okay. And it's totally against this narrative of the child as incompetent, as savage, right? But so many people have been influenced by this book. Well, the writer, but there is another drama behind, who this person was in reality. He was a school director, abusive of his children, abusive of his wife, and writes this kind of book that brings this idea on young people. So this analogy is something that we need to start questioning. Providing, well, trust is a very important part in our practice. We are rarely allowed to trust. Trust means that, again, I treat the other with respect, with dignity, with the right to participate, but also the right to get consequences. And for instance, within the restorative justice approach, it's the culprit, the one who is participating in deciding how to mend the damage. There is something that was used in South Africa after apartheid. There is something that is used also nowadays in my home country, Colombia, with certain members of former guerrilla groups. It deals with, within our schools, it deals with elevating young people to a category in which they are capable. And they start feeling capable because they start building on those skills. Today, I got a message from a former student that made me so happy, because I was very reluctant to speak to her in Estonian. And she was always coming to me in Estonian. And I was like, nope, I don't understand you. I do speak Estonian, but I was like, nope. I was her English teacher. I was like, speak to me in English. She was super afraid of making mistakes. But I didn't change my attitude. It was like, you speak to me in English or I don't speak to you. And she practiced little by little. Yesterday, she got the results for the Cambridge examination. She got a C2, and she was telling me, "Thank you for pushing me because I was afraid of making mistakes, but I knew that you were there not to judge me, but to support me." And that makes me feel like so inspired because that is exactly, I believe, what we want to do is to support people to find their path, right? To develop their tools. It's not about repeating a curriculum made by some big brain in the university. Um, Ciao. It's about equipping them, helping them develop those tools. So thank you very much. This has been my contribution to this discussion. I would love to hear more from you. These are 3 QR codes. You will get the presentation. One is EUDEC, is the European Democratic Education Community. Nasser is a member. We are very happy to have Nasser there. The other one is the Rights-Centric Education. I believe that you guys are also, the Peace School is also there. Believing that rights need to be at the center. Human beings need to be at the center. The reality is at the moment, conventional schooling is about the timetable, the authority of adults, timetable which is age segregated, a standardized curriculum, and the authority of the adult. That is at the center, not the learner. And then Unmute Learning is my own consultancy service that I offer, dealing with participatory governance, self-directed learning, and circle practice, and how to develop this within learning environment. Thank you very much. There is some extra information in case you want to read more, and I appreciate your attention. Thanks. Let's have a conversation now. I will try to stop talking. I talk too much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Charlie. It was really interesting because we always talked about practical practices within school and democratic schools, but we never actually focused on theories and concepts that where actually this idea of democratic schooling has come from, it definitely
Mhm.
has a history and why it actually led to like people like you to promote for this ideology. Um, so I actually have a question. So you talked about how we can bring democratic practices within the school, but it's not just about students themselves who are participating in the school setting. It also involves their families, right? Because their
Mhm.
parents are also they play a huge role in their education journey.
Yeah.
So based on your experience, like with your practice in Estonia and everything, how was their reaction? How was the parents'
Mhm.
reaction to democratic education, and how were they, did they accept it? Was it hard? Was it challenging for you? Or was it like easy and it wasn't a big challenge?
No, it wasn't easy. Thank you. Um, I'm not sharing my screen anymore, right?
No, no, no.
Okay, cool. Um, Traditionally in homeschooling, there are 3 different kinds of parents. Traditional. This is like several research studies have found this fact. One is the religious families, the ones that believe that the conventional public school is too liberal for them. Then you have the hippies, the ones who look for an alternative, and then you have the high achievers, the ones who have a path for their children and want their children to be better than everybody else. We get the same in around the same categories within the democratic schools. Less religious, definitely, but the high achievers, hippies, families that don't know where they are, that perhaps the democratic school is the last resort, the last possibility for them because the children have been rejecting conventional schooling actively, opposing. So there is a lot of disruptions, a lot of being tagged as a problem child. Um, I think that it's tremendously important. I mean, we tend to believe that schooling and learning are the same. Schooling and education, schools and education, they are not the same. We are speaking about educational system. There is no an educational system. There is a schooling system. Um, and we need to understand as societies that learning is much wider. Education is lifelong learning, whereas schooling is a finite game. It's a game that you win or you lose. You get a 5 or you get a 1, right? Whereas education is an infinite game that is continuous, right? So when we focus only on the academics, I believe that we are missing the other part of the picture. And parents in general, uh, they want the best to the kids, right? But there is a lot of fear. And the fear is fed by ignorance. I'm not insulting parents. I'm saying ignorance as I ignore something, right? Um, I believe that as learning environments, we have a responsibility with our parents and families as to how to provide the knowledge that is necessary to deal with those fears, right? We have many hippie parents, hippie in the sense that these were people who were looking for alternatives, who recognized the systemic violence towards children, but also understood that learning happens in multiple ways, not only sitting behind a desk and repeating what teachers are saying. So and I'm still active with the school, even though I'm not working there with Suvemäe. My child goes there, and I make part of the parental circle. And one of the goals that we have for this year is to provide support to the new parents to understand whether or not this is an alternative for them, whether it is actually what they want, but also help with very specific issues like how to set agreements with young people, how to set functional boundaries with them, how to stop controlling and start constructing together with young people. Well, any people will become much more engaged if things are done with them than if things are done for them or to them, right? So the approach of developing the conditions, the necessary conditions for the child to develop the potential and their interests and explore goes together with families. Oftentimes families believe that here is my child, fix him, her, them, whatever way they want to call. But this is a collaborative effort, and I feel that we don't take seriously those fears. So when parents get to know that, for instance, what is the number one skill highlighted by the OECD around the world is not computational thinking, but empathy. They realize maybe that, we bring this data, and now something that we need to start doing, hopefully we will start doing it in 2026, is to rescue the narratives and experiences of graduates of democratic schools. We will have a mini something with Baran also here participating in the Learning Planet Festival. We will have a youth panel exploring how they have learned in contexts which are outside of the conventional schooling sphere. How do they see the learning? What was challenging? What was easy? Have they found the different motivators to engage in different processes, right? So I believe that we need these bits of information, but there is a lot about how fear inhibits learning, why age mixed environments are good for learning anything that you want, how older kids teaching something to younger kids actually enhances their own learning skills. Their self-esteem is boosted. How not punishing somebody, but rather trying to fix the damage helps the climate of the school, helps the sense of belonging that the kids are developing. So I feel that it's important just to provide lots of information to families, listen to their fears, validate them, but at the same time, explain and share sort of dossier or share knowledge that backs your choices, right? In my case, I had one parent who came and said, well, why is it that you are not teaching them history? You're just telling them to make their own questions. And I was like, yes, that is exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing some provocations, right? So in the style of Reggio Emilia. So in the beginning, for instance, I tell them something about World War I, or I tell them something about Mayans, and just to catch a little bit the interests or not. And then we engage in this collaborative process. Um, After that meeting, I explained to the mother what I was doing. She felt much more confident that, okay, so the goal of this is not about content, but it's rather about asking questions and finding information, right? So there are lots of skills. I believe that we need to disenfranchise the school, like to bring it outside of that bubble that we have, which is so strongly kept there, and start a communication that deals also with bringing the community to the school. So in our case, some parents were coming to the school. They could see what was happening. They were participating, in some cases, in the school meetings, seeing how it went and what were the dynamics. But this, and also the kids, the kids are fantastic in that sense that many of them were bringing the school circle to their homes and saying, okay, now we need to listen to each other. If you want to speak, then you need to raise your hand. I'm going to say why I feel angry about this. And they are reproducing this practice because they have been learning it, pragmatically. It's not in a book. So yeah, communication is fundamental.
Yeah, sometimes I think like changing the systematic level is much easier than changing the underlying like layers like families or even schools, teachers and all of that
Yeah.
is very interesting.
At the same level, at the same time, I'm personally, I don't feel that every school needs to be alternative or progressive or
No.
democratic, because there are families that want exams,
Yeah.
stress, homework. I believe that that is not
It's more about
right.
the diversity.
Yes,
The
it should be,
diversity. Yeah.
yeah, there should be alternatives
Yeah.
backed by science, right? We are not talking about Scientology,
Hmm.
but backed by science that support the full development of human potential.
Does anyone else have any questions? Just concerning the time, I just want to.
I have a question.
Okay.
I have two.
Okay.
You first, Mr. Yusufi.
Yes,
I'm going to next.
thank, hello, Charlie. Thank
Hey,
you very
Oscar.
much for your excellent presentation today. Thank you. I know you have a many years experience and working in democratic education, and I know you have many successful results. But I have a question. I understand why democratic education is not welcome in closed and and authority countries. But why is not democratic education common in North America and Europe? Why don't governments, parents, and teachers, why don't parents, government,
Mhm.
teachers support of this method, this approach? What do you think,
Thank
Charlie?
you, Nasser, for the question. It's interesting because if you check what
Mhm,
happens in North Korea
mhm,
or what happens in Mexico or what happens in, let's say, France, it's basically the same system. Again, dividing the kids by age, organizing their days, the authority of the adult, rewards and punishments. We are
mhm,
speaking about the same modernity. We are speaking about the same centralized power, the need to guarantee obedience and submission. We are speaking about the need that the state has that people develop a mindset to become key actors in the labor market, in the economic market.
mhm,
So I might disagree to the extent that, for instance, in the US, there are so many schools, but in the 70s, many schools were born, right? And not many of them continue, but still, there are some states like Massachusetts where you have tons of democratic schools, or Reggio Emilia or Montessori, different approaches. Agile learning centers in the state of New York. Have been traveling around the world, already settled down in Europe. I feel that there is, since the 90s, there has been a continuous raising awareness, not only in families, but also educators. But it has been still very shy, right? So here in Europe, supposedly the most democratic continent of them all, I beg to disagree. There are people who have been working in education for 30, 40 years and have never heard of young people making decisions with adults, right? It doesn't reach education faculties or pedagogy faculties. And this has to do with this coloniality of knowledge. It's like, this is mambo jumbo. We don't speak about that, right? Ignoring the amount of research, and there is a lot of research on this alternative learning environments. So I feel that the progressive movement is growing. And I think it's everywhere that is growing, but perhaps not in North Korea. But within Latin America, for instance, is incredible. India is a place that is just resisting actively the top-down approach of schooling, involving the communities in building those alternatives and solutions. Bangalore is a very, very dynamic place. So I feel the question that comes to that has come oftentimes to the discussion is, why is democratic education so white and so middle class, right? And perhaps on the one hand, we have also fear, the fear of parents to bet on something they don't really understand very well. There is the Stockholm syndrome that many parents have. Maybe they hated school, but they don't see any other option for the children than the usual school, the conventional school. And then we have, a system that is still telling you that if they have smart screens, everything will be better. But we are seeing it on a daily basis. It's not better. This is a country where I am at the moment, Estonia. Been living here for 20 years, so I'm not a guest. It has the highest PISA results in Europe, but it also has the highest rate of youth self-harm and suicide in Europe. So obviously, when somebody brings this up, people will dismiss it because it is not good for their national pride, speak about suicide. They would rather speak about the good things. But it's a system that is not working. I believe that we need to be more active. And that is one thing that we are doing with EUDEC, is to bring more possibilities for people to learn more about different approaches and to make decisions, to pressurize also. In Spain, there are some towns that were empty of inhabitants, and they were bringing entire families got together, spoke with the local authorities and said, we want to implement here the school, we want to use your school, but we are going to deal with the pedagogical process. We will respect the state curriculum, but we are going to do in different ways. And the towns have opened the doors. So there is a movement of 15, 20 families moving to a small town to have a public school that actually follows human rights, or has project-based learning, not necessarily, or a forest school that has some lessons within the schoolhouse and some other lessons in the forest. So I feel that people are becoming more empowered, but definitely it's not something that has been advertised, right? And again, I feel that the semantic issue is very much relevant. We continue speaking about education and schooling as if they were the same thing, but they are not. They are not. I don't know in Farsi if you have two words for the word learn and study. Do you have two words or one?
I think we do have two words. I think it's learn
Yeah.
is yadgiri and study is ders خوندن, I think, right?
Okay. In Estonian, they only have one, which
Okay.
is õppima. So it's interesting to reflect that sometimes you study but you don't learn, and sometimes you learn but you don't study, right? And how learning happens depends on the context, not on new textbooks, not on screens, not on having more lessons of this or that. It depends on the whole context. Is it a caring context? Is it a supportive context, which I feel I have rights? So I hope, yeah, I mean, I don't feel that Europe is the panacea, uh, or the northern part of the globe. But I feel that the southern part of the globe is becoming much more active in resisting, and I would rescue that. I support it totally.
Thank you.
By the way, I would like to invite you all to the EUDEC, is the International Democratic Education Community, and it will have a conference in March, in the end of March. So if you write EUDEC Democratic Education in one of your browsers, you will find information about it. It will be online. I think it will be for free. And it is a very interesting experience, a possibility, sorry, to share knowledge, but also become more in contact with other experiences that might support each other. So everybody's very welcome. I think that Saba, you had two questions. Yes.
Saba, do you want to ask your question?
Of course, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. The part that you said about children who are extremely afraid of making mistakes, that topic lead me up like in my mind. And my question is it our responsibility to help children face their own fears and understand that their making mistake is a natural part of life that help us to learn everything about life? Or does it also require families and ask for their support? Does we should we do that? Should we help them, or we are asking to their families?
Totally agree with you. I mean, you are asking, but I agree with you.
Yes.
That it's a collaborative effort, right? It has to do with, I mean, how can we make sure that young people start setting their plans and start engaging in more risks? Risks like, I'm not talking about life or death, but I'm talking about experimenting things, or asking for help if I don't understand. We need to stop using grades, rewards, and punishments. I feel that it's important to create, perhaps together, and this has to do again with the negotiated curriculum, to create together assessment possibilities with the person engaged. So I used to have with okay, what do you think? How do you think your research and the way how you are going to present it would look like, perfect? How would it look like, more or less? I didn't spend much time. How would you feel that you could have done better? So identifying, for instance, if I use a number of resources, if I make a game to engage young people. I feel that only when they start um, experiencing the uncertain is when we have kind of the idea that they are being prepared not only for the future, but also for the present. Dealing with uncertainty, I feel that is the most challenging part of being a young person, especially when you see that the world is in such a ideological chaos that the old certainties are not there. So I feel that we are preventing young people from taking risks since they are small. And I just share a link there in the chat The latest article I wrote 2 days ago has to do with risk taking. Why is it important that young people take risks? Maybe they overplan. I will do the most wonderful thing. If they fail and we punish them, they will not try again, or they will just comply to whatever way you are telling them that it's safe. But if we are inviting them to explore, to make mistakes, and then analyze with them together, and in this part, parents need to be involved. What went wrong? How could I have done it better? What do I need to do now? Who could help me on that? This person will become empowered, agentic, become an agent of his or her own learning. And I feel that parents need to, we as parents, I have a 15-year-old child, we need to stop paying so much attention to grades. Yes, they are important, but what is truly important is the skills that are underneath those. It's how the person is feeling, whether the person is asking questions, has already more or less an idea, I want to do this, I want to do that. The moment we stop judging, we build more on communication. So if we communicate effectively, I feel there is no issue. They would come to you when they need help. They would tell you when they have failed. You would reflect together, right? But building that trust demands nonviolent communication and involving the person, right? So yeah, it's hard because especially when there are some kids are, for instance, in democratic schools and they don't get grades. Some people within the same family, the extended family, go to conventional schools. They get grades, and so parents also feel like, is this a good choice? Am I making a mistake? I don't want to make a mistake, right? So it's at the same time, only knowledge can help them deal with that fear. And if we have access, we need to support that process. I hope
Thank you
that
so
more or less I
much.
went through it.
Thank you. And I will be appreciated if you share your writing with us.
My what?
Your writing that you wrote it 2 days ago that you told
Yes,
us.
it is there. I put it on the chat. There is the link. It's Unmute Learning. I have this blog on Substack. So there are some topics. There is an article about decolonial heutagogy. And there is also another one. I went through a process to connect a bit corruption with how we are teaching kids in schools. The individualistic perspective, the means and the ends are separable. As long as I can get money, doesn't matter if I cheat. All this stuff is embedded in that. So there is another one on that. Another one, why we need smaller schools, participatory approaches to prevent bullying. Yeah, there are some interesting, at least for me, pieces of reflection, and I hope that you can also share it and comment if you want. But my pleasure to share with you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Do you have a question?
Thank you, Vera.
I think you're on mute. You have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hello.
Yeah. Thank you. Hello. I really appreciate your presentation. It was very amazing. The challenge you explained in this presentation, I would like to ask a question about my project as teaching and learning through dialogue. Could we consider dialogue as a way of learning, like classroom dialogue, to reach out the democratic education system? Some features, for example, learning from each other, support each other to being humanity, and make a peaceful community. Many thanks. Thank you.
That sounds beautiful. Thank you. Did I understand correctly? You have a learning project, and
Actually, teaching and learning through dialogue and for dialogue, for dialogic inquiry, dialogic learning, classroom dialogue, actually in this way.
Yes, beautiful. Yes, absolutely. It's so much related. The student voice framework, the one that by Laura Landi, that is very interesting, and you can find resources online explaining how to set each one of the steps. There are 4 different steps. One has to do with a space. How do we build a safe space where young people can participate in making decisions with adults? The second one is voice. How do we actually make sure that every voice is heard, that everybody who wants to participate can participate and express themselves? For that, we need to be very aware of how we use pauses who might monopolize the turn of speaking. Excuse me. Then you have the audience, which has to do with who is actually listening to young people. Are they talking to an empty room? Who are the people who are listening to that feedback or to those ideas that they are bringing, and how they are collaborating, this audience collaborating with young people in developing those, asking critical questions as well. And then it goes to influence, which is how do these ideas and new practices that come from young people actually find a place in reality, and they happen. This is very important because we don't want to feed a disempowered or powerless perspective or feeling of cynicism that they say that we can speak and we can decide together, but in reality nothing happens, right? So influence means that actually change happens, that if the kids are worried about how the curriculum is organized, we get together and we decide together on how the curriculum can be, or the timetable can be better organized. I feel, for instance, something which is ridiculous that we continue doing in schools is to have physical education based on age and forced. So everybody has to do the same, right? And sometimes early in the morning. So the kids are eating something at home, get to the school, and then they have to run 10 times around the park. I wouldn't feel good running 10 times anywhere after having breakfast, you know. So we need to involve them into thinking together, into developing the actual individualized perspective. What we see nowadays is that children are not at the center of any kind of learning process. The center is the curriculum, the timetable, and the authority of the adults. Very technocratic. So we need to develop different possibilities. And I salute you, Gazem, with your project of dialogic learning, because it is the way. It's talking to others that we learn how to become more collaborative, more strategic, also within our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Charlie. I don't think if we have more time to maybe have another
Thank you very
question,
much.
but thank you so much. It was very inspirational, your presentation, everything. I have recorded the session, so I will upload it on our YouTube channel. We have a channel, so we will upload all
Nice.
the
Please tag me there.
I will, yes. I will share the links with you and everything. And yes, our next session would be with Richard Francham. It would be on January the 7th. So we will share the posters, the links, and everything very soon, so you can register if you'd like to participate. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you,
And
everybody.
good
Thank you.
night.
Thank you, Charlie. Bye.
Lots of love from here. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.